This was an alien creature, never before seen by humankind. It had 2 heads and 8 long intestines, each about 2 meters in length. Unfortunately, it was rather arrogant, so much so that another alien creature swallowed it whole. Upon witnessing this scene, Lao Hai turned pale with shock, but just then, he seemed to step on something. As he lifted his foot, other creatures suddenly appeared and devoured him completely. In just moments, nothing was left. So, where did these strange creatures come from? The previous night, a sports car had entered the desert. De Zhuang pulled his girlfriend out of the trunk and dragged her into a small cabin. Was he planning to do something crazy out here in the wilderness? Suddenly, De Zhuang set his girlfriend on fire. It turned out he was preparing for a firefighter's exam and had come here for field training. But just then, a fireball came speeding toward him at thousands of kilometers per second. The immense impact launched his girlfriend and the car hundreds of meters away. The next morning, biologist Lao Bai and geologist Lao Hai arrived at the crash site. They were shocked to find that moss had already begun to grow on the meteorite that had fallen only the night before. Lao Hai struck the surface of the meteorite with his hammer and discovered an unknown liquid seeping out. He collected a small piece to bring back for study, but the sample began dividing at an alarming rate, bursting out of its container. After a genetic examination, it was clear that this was no Earth-based organism. They quickly led their students to excavate the meteorite. However, when they descended into the cave again, they were completely stunned. Around the meteorite had grown fungal, mushroom-like structures, and the ground was covered with wriggling worms. Lao Bai picked one up with tweezers and noticed that they could only survive within the meteorite's modified environment. Once exposed to open air, they suffocated instantly. They captured several specimens for further study and were shocked to see that the creatures could reproduce asexually. If this continued, the consequences would be disastrous. The two immediately drove back to the crash site, only to discover that the military had already sealed it off. Once inside the camp, Lao Bai realized the commander was his old friend and that a disease control expert named Zio Mei had joined as well. After losing their relevance, the two scientists were forced to leave dejectedly. Returning to their lab, they were horrified to find all their research data stolen. That night, the two disguised themselves as soldiers and sneaked into the military base. They discovered that, in just a few hours, the cave had turned into a tropical rainforest filled with plants and bizarrely shaped life forms. Suddenly, a giant mosquito landed on Lao Hai's body. Its slender proboscis easily pierced his skin and entered him. He screamed in agony as the worm inside moved down his leg. Doctors suggested immediate amputation, warning that his life was in danger. Lao Hai's body cells desperately tried to resist, but the worm suddenly turned and burrowed deeper into his thigh. The doctor acted quickly, grabbing a 40-meter surgical forceps, and finally managed to pull the worm out. Meanwhile, creatures began appearing throughout the city. At the lake, a middle-aged man bent down to wash his hands, unaware of a small head emerging from the water. When he turned back, he became the creature's dinner. Soon after, that same creature mysteriously died. De Zhuang retrieved its corpse, realizing that underground creatures were now emerging toward the surface, though still unable to breathe Earth's air. Elsewhere, 4 housewives were chatting at home when one of them heard noises coming from the closet. They opened it to find an ugly, hussy-like monster inside, pretending to look pitiful. One brave woman extended her hand to touch it, but suddenly, the creature shot out its long tongue and bit her, while the others frantically searched for weapons. The creature unexpectedly collapsed and died. The police were called, and Lao Bai and his team arrived to investigate, but no one could determine the cause of death. Then De Zhuang made a startling discovery. The creature looked like a winged dinosaur, but seemed unable to survive in Earth's atmosphere. After Lao Hai analyzed the area, he concluded that the underground tunnels connected to nearby mines, allowing these monsters to appear across the city. Just as he proudly shared his findings, one of the creatures stood up and expelled a fleshy ball from its mouth before collapsing. Moments later, a baby dinosaur hatched from it. This new one, however, could breathe oxygen, and within seconds, it had grown many times larger, spread its wings, and flew straight toward the city center. The winged dinosaur-like creature began wreaking havoc in the city. If it continued to reproduce, humanity would be doomed. When the armed trio arrived, the creature had disappeared. De Zhuang looked at the nearby microphone and began to sing. Surprisingly, the creature was drawn in by the beautiful melody. Lao Bai seized the moment from above and fired 3 shots, bringing the creature down. The absurd story quickly spread across the city. The provincial governor arrived at the base for a briefing, but the situation looked grim. The commanders recommended using incendiary bombs or even nuclear weapons to annihilate the creatures. The governor, unwilling to deploy such destructive force, ordered the use of flame-based weapons instead. Just then, a soldier ran in with alarming news. Intelligent species had evolved inside the cave, destroying all surveillance equipment and trying to escape underground. Sirens blared throughout the base as chaos ensued, and civilians began evacuating the area. Lao Bai realized that failure meant extinction for humanity. Depressed, Lao Hai lit a cigarette and flicked a match, which accidentally landed on a meteorite sample. In an instant, the Type E organisms began dividing and spreading explosively, covering the entire lab bench. They realized that exposure to fire caused their cells to evolve even faster. Lao Bai urgently tried to warn the commander not to use fire, but the stubborn man ignored him. At that moment, Lao Bai noticed an elemental periodic table behind Zio Mei and had an idea. The elements most poisonous to humans might also be deadly to these alien organisms. process. However, destroying them would require at least 500 liters of the element sulfur, which couldn't be gathered so quickly. One student pointed out that shampoos contain a compound called tin sulfide. It could be used as a substitute. Lao Bai immediately mobilized his students, filled a fire truck with shampoo, and rushed to the site. As the commander launched his incendiary strike ahead of schedule, the creatures in the pit began expanding, and a gigantic beast emerged from underground, swiping its massive hand and killing countless soldiers. Horrifyingly, it continued to split and grow. At the critical moment, Lao Bai and his team drove straight in, connected the fire hose, and blasted it with shampoo. The creature oozed thick slime, swelled rapidly, and finally exploded with a thunderous blast. Knowledge truly is power. Master science and chemistry, and you'll never fear the world again.